Continuation of that mechanoreceptor portion. So Merkel cells structure, stimulation mechanism in detail with functions and importance. So Merkel cells, also called the Merkel disc cells or tactile epithelial cells, are specialized cells located in the skin and hair follicles. They are important for the perception of light, touch, and the formation of tactile sensations. So Merkel cells are located in the epidermis, the outermost layer of the skin. They are found in the basal layer of the epidermis, which is the deepest layer of the epidermis. Merkel cells are closely associated with sensory nerve fibers, and together they form specialized structures called Merkel cell neurite complexes or Merkel cell discs. Each Merkel cell is disc-shaped and contains dense granules and numerous microfilaments which provide nutritional structural support. Then stimulation mechanism include Merkel cells are stimulated by mechanical pressure and deformation of the skin. When the skin is touched or pressed, the Merkel cells are compressed, which triggers the release of neurotransmitters that stimulate the sensory nerve fibers associated with the Merkel cells. These nerve fibers then transmit signals to the central nerve system, where they are processed to generate tactile sensations. So Merkel cells have several important functions in the perception of touch and the formation of tactile sensations. Detection of light touch. Merkel cells are specialized for the detection of light touch, which is the perception of pressure or deformation of the skin that does not cause pain or discomfort. The Merkel cells respond to changes in the mechanical forces exerted on the skin, which trigger the release of neurotransmitters that stimulate the associated sensory nerve fibers. This information is then transmitted to the central nerve system, where it is processed to generate the sensation of light touch. So formation of tactile sensations. Merkel cells play a critical role in the formation of tactile sensations, which are the subjective experiences of touch. The tactile sensations are generated in the brain by the processing of signals from the sensory nerve fibers associated with the Merkel cells. The signals are integrated with other sensory information such as temperature and texture to form a coherent perception of touch. Then sensory adaptation. Merkel cells also play a role in sensory adaptation, which is the process by which the sensitivity of sensory receptors changes over time in response to constant stimulation. Merkel cells adapt to sustained pressure by decreasing their sensitivity to mechanical stimuli. This helps to prevent overstimulation of the sensory nerve fibers associated with the Merkel cells and maintain the ability to detect changes in touch. Then development of skin appendages. Merkel cells are involved in the development of skin appendages such as hair follicles and sweat glands. During embryonic development, Merkel cells migrate to the site of hair follicle formation and contribute to the formation of the hair follicle and associated sensory nerve fibers. In summary, Merkel cells are associated specialized cells located in the skin and hair follicle that are important for the perception of light touch and the formation of tactile sensations. They are stimulated by mechanical pressure and deformation of the skin and work together with sensory nerve fibers to form Merkel cell neurite complexes or discs. Merkel cells play a crucial role in the detection of light touch, the formation of tactile sensations, sensory adaptations, and the development of skin appendages. Dysfunction of Merkel cells can lead to sensory deficits and disorders, highlighting their importance in maintaining normal physiological function. Then 10 mechanoreceptors in human body. There are several types of mechanoreceptors in the human body that are responsible for detecting mechanical stimuli such as pressure, touch, and vibration. Here are 10 examples of mechanoreceptors found in the human body. Mucinous corpuscles located in the skin, particularly in the fingertips and lips. Mucinous corpuscles are responsible for detecting light touch. Then Pacinian corpuscles found in the skin and deep tissues. Pacinian corpuscles are sensitive to vibration and deep pressure. Ruffini endings located in the skin. Ruffini endings are responsible for detecting skin stretch and changes in joint position. Then Merkel cells found in the skin. Merkel cells are responsible for detecting light touch and pressure. Then muscle spindles located within skeletal muscles. Muscle spindles detect changes in muscle length and contribute to the sense of proprioception or body position. Then Golgi tendon organs found at the junction between tendons and muscles. Golgi tendon organs detect changes in muscle tension and contribute to the sense of proprioception. Then hair cells found in the inner ear. Hair cells detect mechanical stimuli from sound waves and contribute to the sense of hearing. Then baroreceptors found in the walls of blood vessels and the heart. Baroreceptors detect changes in blood pressure and help regulate cardiovascular function. Then stretch receptors located in the lungs and other organs. Stretch receptors detect changes in organ size and contribute to the regulation of breathing and other physiological functions. Then joint receptors located in the ligaments and joint corpuscles. Joint receptors detect changes in joint position and contribute to the sense of proprioception. Each of these mechanoreceptors plays an important role in the perception of mechanical stimuli and the regulation of physiological functions in human body. Dysfunction or damage of these receptors can lead to sensory deficits and other health problems. Next, hair cell structure stimulation mechanism in detail. Hair cells are specialized sensory cells found in the inner ear, responsible for detecting mechanical stimuli from sound waves and contributing to the sense of hearing. They are unique in structure and function, with a hair-like structure that detects mechanical movement and converts it into electrical signal that is transmitted to the brain. In this essay, we will discuss the structure, stimulation mechanism, and functions of hair cells in detail. Hair cells are elongated columnar cells with a characteristic hair-like structure called stereocilia. These stereocilia are arranged in a graded fashion, with the tallest stereocilia on one end of the cell and the shortest on the other end. The stereocilia are anchored to the tectoral membrane, a gelatinous structure that lies above the hair cells. The tips of the stereocilia are connected by tiny structures called tip links, which are essential for hair cell function. Hair cells are surrounded by supporting cells that help to maintain their structure and function. Then stimulation mechanism includes sound waves enter the ear and cause vibrations in the air-filled spaces of the inner ear. These vibrations are transmitted through the bones of the skull and reach the fluid-filled cochlea, a spiral-shaped organ that contains the hair cell. As the fluid in the cochlea moves, it causes the tectoral membrane to bend, which in turn bends the stereocilia of the hair cells. This mechanical movement of the stereocilia opens ion channels, allowing ions to flow into the hair cell and generate an electrical signal. The electrical signal is then transmitted to the auditory nerve, which sends the information to the brain for processing. Then hair cells are responsible for converting mechanical stimuli from sound waves into electrical signals that are transmitted to the brain for processing. They are essential for the sense of hearing and play a crucial role in the perception of sound. Hair cells are also involved in the detection of head movements and contribute to the sense of balance and spatial orientation. Then dysfunction of damage to hair cells can lead to hearing loss, ringing in the ears, or tinnitus and balance problems. Hair cell loss is a common cause of age-related hearing loss and is also associated with noise-induced hearing loss and certain medical conditions. So in conclusion, hair cells are specialized sensory cells found in the inner ear that are responsible for detecting mechanical stimuli from sound waves and contributing to the sense of hearing. They have a unique hair-like structure that detects mechanical movements and converts it into an electrical signal that is transmitted to the brain. Hair cells are essential for perception of sound and also contribute to the sense of balance and spatial orientation. Dysfunction or damage to hair cells can lead to hearing loss, tinnitus, and balance problems, highlighting the importance of the cells for our overall well-being. Then baroreceptors in detail. Baroreceptors are specialized sensory receptors that detect changes in blood pressure and play a crucial role in regulating cardiovascular function. They are located in the walls of certain blood vessels and in the heart and are responsible for providing feedback to the nerve system to maintain appropriate blood pressure levels. So structure include baroreceptors are structure receptors that are located in the walls of certain blood vessels, such as the carotid sinus in the neck and the aortic arch in the chest, as well as the walls of the heart's atria. They consist of specialized sensory cells that are activated when the walls of the blood vessels or heart chambers are stretched due to changes in blood pressure. The cells are connected to nerve fibers that transmit signals to the brain in response to changes in pressure. Then stimulation mechanism include baroreceptors are activated when the walls of the blood vessel or heart chambers are stretched due to changes in blood pressure. When blood pressure increases, the walls of the blood vessels or heart chambers stretch and activate the baroreceptor cells. The activated cells then send signals to the brain via nerve fibers, which in turn send signals to the heart and blood vessels to reduce blood pressure. When blood pressure decreases, the baroreceptor cells are less active, which triggers a response to increase blood pressure. Then when we just look at the functions, baroreceptors play a crucial role in maintaining appropriate blood pressure levels by providing feedback to the nerve system. They help to regulate blood pressure by detecting changes in pressure and sending signals to the brain to adjust heart rate and blood vessel diameter. When blood pressure increases, baroreceptors send signals to the brain to slow the heart rate and dilate blood vessels, which reduces blood pressure. When blood pressure decreases, baroreceptors send signals to the brain to increase heart rate and constrict blood vessels, which raises blood pressure. This mechanism is known as the baroreceptor reflex and is essential for maintaining proper blood pressure and cardiovascular function. Baroreceptors also play a role in regulating other physiological functions such as fluid and electrolyte balance and in response to stress and other environmental stimuli. Dysfunction or damage to baroreceptors can lead to a range of cardiovascular problems including hypertension like high blood pressure and orthostatic hypertension, low blood pressure when standing up, highlighting the importance of these receptors for our overall health. In conclusion, baroreceptors are specialized sensory receptors that detect changes in blood pressure and play a crucial role in regulating cardiovascular function. They are stretch receptors located in the walls of certain blood vessels and in the heart and provide feedback to the nerve system to maintain appropriate blood pressure levels. Baroreceptors help to regulate blood pressure by detecting changes in pressure and sending signals to the brain to adjust heart rate and blood vessel diameter. Dysfunction or damage to baroreceptors can lead to a range of cardiovascular problems, highlighting the importance of these receptors for our overall well-being. Then stretch receptors. Stretch receptors are a type of sensory receptors that detect stretching or elongation of tissues such as muscles, tendons, and skin. They play a crucial role in regulating various physiological processes including movement, balance, and breathing. In this essay, we will discuss the structure, stimulation mechanism, and functioning of stretch receptors in detail. Stretch receptors are specialized sensory cells that are located in various tissues including muscles, tendons, and skin. They consist of two main components, the sensory organs and the sensory nerve fibers. The sensory organ is made up of muscle fiber or other tissue components that are sensitive to stretching or elongation, and the sensory nerve fibers are connected to the sensory organ and transmit signals to the brain in response to stretching. So stimulation mechanism includes stretch receptors are activated when the tissues they are located in are stretched or elongated. The stretching of the sensory organ causes the sensory nerve fibers to become depolarized, which generates an electrical signal that travels along the nerve fiber and reaches the brain. The brain then processes the signal and generates an appropriate response, which can include muscle contraction, adjustment of posture, or regulation of breathing. So functions include stretch receptors play a critical role in regulating various physiological processes including movement, balance, and breathing. They provide sensory feedback to the brain that is essential for maintaining proper body position and movement. For example, stretch receptors in the muscle and tendons helps to regulate muscle tone and prevent overstretching of muscles during movement. They also provide information about muscle strength, length, and tension, which is used by the brain to control movement and posture. So stretch receptors in the skin are responsible for detecting changes in pressure and position, which is important for maintaining balance and orientation. These receptors provide information about body position and movement of the brain, which is used to adjust posture and maintain balance. So stretch receptors in the lungs and airways play a crucial role in regulating breathing. They detect changes in lung volume and pressure and provide feedback to the brain, which adjusts breathing rate and depth accordingly. Dysfunction or damage to stretch receptors can lead to a range of problems including muscle weakness, poor balance, and breathing difficulties. So in conclusion, stretch receptors are specialized sensory receptors that detect stretching or elongation of tissues and play a critical role in regulating various physiological processes including movement, balance, and breathing. They consist of sensory organs and sensory nerve fibers that activate when tissues are stretched or elongated, generating electrical signals that are transmitted to the brain. Stretch receptors provide sensory feedback that is essential for maintaining proper body position and movement, and dysfunction or damage to these receptors can lead to a range of problems. So joint receptors. Joint receptors are specialized sensory receptors that are located in the joints of the body. They play a crucial role in providing sensory feedback to the brain about the position and movement of joints, which is important for maintaining proper movement and posture. So joint receptors are located in the synovial membrane of the joints and consist of two main types of receptors, type 1 and type 2 receptors. Type 1 receptors are located in the ligaments and joint corpuscles and are sensitive to mechanical deformation, while type 2 receptors are located in the cartilage and are sensitive to changes in pressure. So type 1 receptors are encapsulated by connective tissue and consist of central core of sensory fibers surrounded by a capsule of collagen fibers. Type 2 receptors are also encapsulated by connective tissues and consist of a flattened capsule with a central core of sensory fibers. Then stimulation mechanism. Joint receptors are activated when the joints are moved or undergo changes in pressure. The stretching or compression of receptors generates an electrical signal that is transmitted to the brain through sensory nerve fibers. The brain then processes this signal and generates an appropriate response, which can include muscle contraction, adjustment to posture, or regulation of movement. Functions include joint receptors play a critical role in providing sensory feedback to the brain about the position and movement of joints. They provide information about joint angle, joint position, and movement speed, which is used by the brain to control movement and posture. Then joint receptors also provide information about joint stability and the degree of force between being applied to the joint. So the information provided by joint receptors is used to adjust muscle activity and joint position during movement, which is important for maintaining proper movement and posture. Dysfunction of or damage to joint receptors can lead to a range of problems, including poor movement coordination, inability, and pain. Joint receptors are specialized sensory receptors that are located in the joints of the body and play a crucial role in providing sensory feedback to the brain about the position and movement of joints. They consist of type 1 and type 2 receptors that are activated by mechanical deformation or changes in pressure, generating electrical signals that are transmitted to the brain through sensory nerve fibers. Joint receptors provide information that is essential for maintaining proper movement and posture, and dysfunction or damage to these receptors can lead to a range of problems. Then stimulation mechanism of neuroreceptors in human. Mechanoreceptors are sensory receptors that respond to mechanical stimuli such as pressure, stretch, or vibration. The stimulation mechanism of mechanoreceptors include deformation of their specialized sensory structures, which generates an electrical signal that is transmitted to the central nervous system. So the sensory structures of mechanoreceptors are located in the endings of specialized sensory nerve fibers that are distributed throughout the body. The structures include various types of receptor cells such as hair cells, Merkel cells, and Pacinian corpuscles, which respond to different types of mechanical stimuli. When mechanical force is applied to the sensory structures, it deforms the receptor cells and changes their membrane potential. This change in membrane potential triggers the opening of ion channels in the membrane of receptor cells, leading to the influx or efflux of ions such as sodium, potassium, or calcium. This generates an electrical signal in the form of an action potential, which is propagated along the sensory nerve fiber to the central nervous system. The magnitude and duration of the electrical signal generated by the mechanoreceptors depend on the strength and frequency of the mechanical stimulus. Different types of mechanoreceptors have different sensitivity ranges and respond to different types of mechanical stimuli. For example, Pacinian corpuscles are sensitive to high-frequency vibrations and rapid changes in pressure, while Merkel cells are sensitive to sustained pressure and skin indentation. Muscle spindles, which are specialized mechanoreceptors located in the muscles, are sensitive to changes in muscle length and tension and are responsible for providing proprioceptive feedback to the central nervous system. Pacinian corpuscles, Ruffini corpuscles, muscle spindles, stimulation mechanism in detail. So first we are going to learn about the Pacinian corpuscle stimulation mechanism. So when mechanical force is applied to the Pacinian corpuscle, it deforms the layer of connective tissue, which in turn deforms the fluid-filled chambers and compresses the central axon. This deformation generates an electrical signal in the form of action potential, which is propagated along the axon to the central nervous system. Then Ruffini corpuscle are a type of mechanoreceptor that responds to sustained pressure and skin stretch. This specialized sensory structure consists of elongated spindle-shaped cells with numerous branches that wrap around collagen fibers in the skin. So when mechanical force is applied to the skin, it deforms the collagen fibers, which in turn stretch and deform the Ruffini corpuscles. This deformation generates an electrical signal in the form of an action potential, which is propagated along the branches of sensory cells to the central nervous system. So muscle spindles are there. Muscle spindles are a type of mechanoreceptor that is located within the muscle and responds to changes in muscle length and tension, which we have already learned. So we will be just skipping to the function, the mechanism of action only. When the muscle is stretched, the intrafusal muscle fibers within the spindle are also stretched, which generates an electrical signal in the form of an action potential. The signal is transmitted along the sensory nerve fibers to the central nervous system, where it is processed and used to control muscle contraction and maintain proprioception. So that's all about this topics. Then muscle spindles, Golgi tendon organs, baroreceptors, stimulation mechanism. So muscle spindle, the stimulation mechanism of muscle spindle include the stretching of intrafusal muscle fibers within the spindle. When a muscle is stretched, the muscle spindles within it are also stretched. The stretching leads to the deformation of intrafusal muscle fibers, which generates an action potential in the sensory neuron that are innervating the spindle. The sensory neuron of the muscle spindle are known as primary afferent fibers, which have their cell bodies and the dorsal root ganglia of the spinal cord. These fibers are divided into two types, like type 1 fiber and type 2 fiber. And this type 1A fibers are large and myelinated and are respond to the rate of change in muscle length. Then type 2 fibers are smaller and less myelinated and they respond to changes in muscle length. When the intrafusal muscle fibers of the muscle spindle are stretched, the type 1A and the type 2 fibers generate action potentials that are propagated along their axons to the spinal cord. These action potentials synapse with motor neurons in the spinal cord, which innervates the extrafusal muscle fibers and cause them to contract. This contraction counteracts the stretch of the muscle, thus maintaining muscle tone and preventing overstretching. Then Golgi tendon organ. The stimulation mechanism of Golgi tendon organ involved the deformation of the collagen fibers within the tendon. When the muscle contracts, the tension within the tendon increases, which deforms the collagen fibers within the Golgi tendon organ. This deformation generates an action potential in the sensory neuron that are innervating the organ. The sensory neurons of the Golgi tendon organs are known as 1B fibers, which have their cell bodies in the dorsal root ganglia of the spinal cord. These fibers are also myelinated and large in diameter, and the Golgi tendon organ is stimulated. The 1B fibers generate action potentials that are propagated along their axons to the spinal cord. So that's all about this topic. Then these action potentials synapse with inhibitory interneurons in spinal cord, which inhibit the motor neuron that are innervating the extrafusal muscle fibers. This inhibition leads to a decrease in muscle tension, thus preventing excessive muscle contraction and protecting the muscle from damage. Then baroreceptors function with different mechanism. So the stimulation mechanism of baroreceptors involve the deformation of the nerve endings within the receptor. When the blood pressure or heart rate changes, the blood vessels or heart valves stretch or contract, which deforms the nerve endings within the baroreceptor. This deformation generates an action potential in the sensory neuron that are innervating the receptor. The sensory neurons of the baroreceptors are known as baroreceptor reflex arcs, and they have their cell bodies in the gasopharyngeal nerve and the vagus nerve, which transmit the action potentials to the medulla oblongata in the brain stem. Then the hair cells, Merkel cells, hair cells stimulation mechanism. So hair cells, Merkel cells and other hair cells are types of mechanoreceptors. So and just try to learn about the Merkel cell. Each of these mechanoreceptors has a unique structure and stimulation mechanism that allows them to detect different types of mechanical stimuli in the human body. So, what is the importance of mechanoreceptors? Mechanoreceptors are of great importance in human body as they are responsible for detecting the transmitting mechanical stimuli. These receptors allow us to perceive and respond to our environment, allowing us to navigate through our surroundings and interact with the world around us. Mechanoreceptors play a critical role in sensory processing, allowing us to sense a variety of stimuli including touch, pressure, vibration, sound, and changes in blood, body position, and movement. Without these receptors, we would not be able to sense physical sensations such as pain or temperature changes or have an understanding of our body's position and movement in space. So, mechanoreceptors also play an important role in motor control and coordination. They provide feedback to the central nervous system, allowing us to make adjustments to our movement and maintain proper posture and balance. For example, muscle spindle detects changes in muscle length and provide feedback to the nervous system, allowing us to adjust our movement to avoid injury and proper posture management. Further, mechanoreceptors also play a role in regulation of physiological functions such as blood pressure, heart rate, and breathing. Baroreceptors, for example, detect changes in blood pressure and provide feedback to the central nervous system, which then can make the necessary adjustments to regulate blood pressure and maintain homeostasis. In conclusion, mechanoreceptors are essential for our ability to sense and interact with other environment and to maintain proper motor control and physiological function. Without these receptors, we would not be able to perceive and respond to mechanical stimuli, which would greatly impair our ability to function in our daily lives. So, functions of mechanoreceptors. Mechanoreceptors are sensory receptors that detect structural stimuli such as pressure, vibration, and touch. They are found throughout the body, including the skin, muscles, joints, and internal organs, and play an essential role in sensory processing, motor control, and physiological function. So, sensory processing, mechanoreceptors in the skin are responsible for the perception of touch, pressure, and vibration. These receptors allow us to sense different textures, pressure sensations, and changes in our environment, which is critical for our ability to interact with and navigate through our surroundings. The different types of mechanoreceptors in the skin include Merkel cells, Meissner's corpuscles, Penisian corpuscles, and Ruffini corpuscles. So they also do the function of motor control. Next function include the physiological functions such as blood pressure, heart rate, and breathing. Baroreceptors perform functions related with the detect changes in blood pressure and provide feedback to the central nervous system, etc. Then, so without these receptors, we would be unable to interact with other environment and maintain proper bodily functions. Therefore, understanding the functions of mechanoreceptors is crucial for understanding how our body sense and respond to mechanical stimuli and for developing interventions to treat a variety of conditions related to sensory and motor dysfunction. Next, defects in mechanoreceptors. Defects in mechanoreceptors can lead to a range of sensory and motor dysfunctions, which can have significant impacts on a person's quality of life. So, when we try to discuss some of the most common defects in mechanoreceptors and their effects in sensory processing, motor control, and physiological function. Sensory deficits. One of the most common deficits in mechanoreceptors is peripheral neuropathy, a condition in which the nerves that carry sensory information from the body to the brain are damaged or dysfunctional. This can lead to a range of sensory deficits including numbness, tingling, and reduced sensitivity to touch and pressure. People with peripheral neuropathy may also experience changes in their sense of balance and coordination, as well as difficulty with fine motor tasks that rely on tactile feedback. Then motor defects in muscle spindles, Golgi tendon organs, and other neuroreceptors involved in motor control are also have significant impacts on person's ability to move and perform daily activities. For example, damage to muscle spindles can lead to muscle weakness, reduced range of motion, and difficulty maintaining proper posture and balance. Similarly, damage to Golgi tendon organs can lead to a loss of proprioceptive feedback, which can make it difficult to judge the amount of force needed to perform tasks such as gripping or lifting objects. So, physiological deficits will be there. So, defects in baroreceptors, which are involved in regulating blood pressure and heart rate, can also have significant effects on physiological function. For example, damage to baroreceptors can lead to orthostatic hypotension, a condition in which blood pressure drops suddenly upon standing up, leading to dizziness, fainting, and other symptoms. Similarly, damage in the mechanoreceptor involved in regulating breathing and other physiological functions can lead to a range of dysfunctions. So, while some other conditions are treatable with medications, physical therapy, and other interventions, many are chronic and may require ongoing management. Therefore, understanding the causes and effects of mechanoreceptors defects is crucial for developing effective treatment and interventions for people with sensory and motor dysfunctions. So, diseases related with this include peripheral neuropathy. Peripheral neuropathy is a condition in which the nerves that carry sensory information from the body to the brain are damaged or dysfunctional. This can lead to a range of sensory deficits including numbness, tingling, and reduced sensitivity to touch and pressure. So, peripheral neuropathy can be caused by a range of factors including diabetes, chemotherapy, and other medical conditions. Then, carpal tunnel syndrome. Carpal tunnel syndrome is a condition in which the median nerve, which runs from the forearm to the hand, is compressed as it passes through the wrist. This compression can cause tingling, numbness, and weakness in the hand and wrist, making it difficult to perform fine motor tasks such as typing or gripping objects. So, there are two diseases which are related with this mechanoreceptor dysfunction. So, peripheral neuropathy is a condition in which the nerves that carry sensory information from the body to the brain are damaged or dysfunctional. This can lead to a range of sensory deficits including numbness, tingling, and reduced sensitivity to touch and pressure. So, peripheral neuropathy can be caused by a range of factors including diabetes, chemotherapy, and other medical conditions. Then, carpal tunnel syndrome. So, carpal tunnel syndrome is a condition in which the median nerve, which runs from the forearm to the hand, is compressed as it passes through the wrist. This compression can cause tingling, numbness, and weakness in the hand and wrist, making it difficult to perform fine motor tasks such as typing or gripping objects. Carpal tunnel syndrome is often related to repetitive strain injuries, but it can also be caused by other medical conditions. Then, tendinitis. Tendinitis is a condition in which the tendons that connect muscles to bones become inflamed or irritated. This can cause pain, swelling, and reduced range of motion in the affected joint. Tendinitis is often related to overuse injuries, but it can also be caused by other medical conditions. Then, Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's disease is a progressive neurological disorder that affects the motor control centers of the brain. People with Parkinson's disease often experience tremors, stiffness, and difficulty in balance and coordination. While the exact cause of Parkinson's disease are not fully understood, it is thought to be related to dysfunction in the dopaminergic and other neurotransmitter systems of the brain. In conclusion, there are several diseases and conditions related to mechanoreceptor dysfunction, including peripheral neuropathy, carpal tunnel syndrome, tendinitis, and Parkinson's disease. These conditions can have significant impacts on sensory processing, motor control, and physiological function. So, just to conclude this topic, let's once again try to learn a major important topic, that is why mechanoreceptors are important. Mechanoreceptors are important because they play a crucial role in our sensory perception, motor control, and physiological function. They allow us to sense and respond to changes in our environment, and they help us maintain our balance and posture. So, sensory perception. Mechanoreceptors are responsible for our ability to sense touch, pressure, vibration, and other tactile stimuli. This information is processed by the nerve system and used to create our sense of touch and proprioception, which is our awareness of our body position and movement. Then, motor control. Mechanoreceptors also play an important role in motor control. They provide feedback to the nerve system about the tension and stretch of our muscles and tendons, which allows us to adjust our movements and maintain our balance and posture. Then, physiological function. Some types of mechanoreceptors, such as baroreceptors and stretch receptors, are involved in regulating our physiological functions, such as blood pressure and heart rate. They provide important feedback to the nerve system about changes in our internal environment and help us maintain homeostasis. So, injury prevention. Mechanoreceptors can also help to prevent injury by altering us to potentially harmful stimuli such as excessive pressure or tension in our muscles and tendons. This allows us to adjust our movement and avoid overloading the structures. Overall, mechanoreceptors are essential important part of our sensory and motor systems, and they play critical roles in maintaining our overall health and well-being. Understanding the importance of mechanoreceptors can help us appreciate the complexity and sophistication of our bodies and inspire us to take better care of them. Thank you for listening.